what goes on with this kind of business leads itself to what I do on the drum set in a funny kind of way. Because what I do on the drums when I use my samples and triggers and all that sort of stuff is that I find the tonality of each sample and each trigger and all this sort of business. And what this lends itself to is a thing called polychords, okay? Because when we start getting into it, we can start to get pretty out there chords. I mean, of course, there's a C chord. Okay, that's fine. But then we could have C7. Why is that a C7? You know, that kind of thing. Because of the flattened 7th degree. You see, there's that kind of stuff there. And what happens then is that if we want a C6, for instance, that kind of thing, you know, where does that come from? Why do we do this and all this? And so what happens is when you're actually dealing with, say, horn sections, say in a brass band, if you're dealing with classical music, or if you're dealing with keyboards against rhythm guitar and all this sort of stuff, and you start to do extended chords, you can come up with these cockamamie names like, you know, C7 sharp 9, flat 13, and all this sort of stuff, you know. But what actually starts to happen is that if you actually take triads, for instance, and you work out your chords, and I'm just dealing with C, you know, that kind of thing, so just C chord. There's a good old C chord there. Okay. Now, that has the notes C, E, and G in it, okay? So that's fine, that's a C chord, and you spread it over the 5 or 6 strings, depending on the voicing of the chord. And then what happens then is that if you wanted to add a different color or have the keyboard come over with some beautiful voices or strings over the top or anything like that, you might want to get the keyboard player to play perhaps an E minor, okay, over the top of a C major, okay? While you're playing C down below. The reason being is because with the C major, you have the notes, as I said, C, E, and G. Now, if you're going to play E minor, right, you have the triad, it's a minor triad, and what you have is the triad of E, G, and B. Do you get it? 2 out of 3 notes are shared by the same 2 chords. Do you see? Because what happens is you've got a C chord, C, E, G, and then what happens is when you go to E minor, it's E, G, those 2 are the same between the 2 chords, and then a B on top. Now, if you were to go back to the C chord, and then try and superimpose in E minor, your first thought is, well, how do I do that? Because I don't have enough fingers, you know, to do 2 chords. But what's the extra note? You've got C, E, G, so therefore, if you go to E minor, you've got E, G, and B. So if you put the B note on top of a C chord, what do you get? You get a C major 7 chord. I love you, baby. I love you so. The most sugary chord in the world is the major 7th. Oh, I love you. But if you didn't want it so sugar-coated, coming in with the keyboard, you see, and things like that. And you're playing a C major 7th, but what you're doing is dividing the 2 sounds, you see.